Hi, and welcome to Viewpoints, a virtual podcast all about the founders, innovators, and investors who together are building the future of spatial computing. I'm Dave Haynes, and my co-host is Petri Rajahalme from NORDIC XR Startups. In this episode, we'll be speaking to Spike Laurie from Hiro Capital and Dr. Doom from LIV. Okay, hello and welcome to Viewpoints, the virtual podcast where we talk to the investors, the founders and creators who are building category-defining companies in XR and spatial computing. Today we're going to be talking about esports, gaming, mixed reality, and we have some amazing guests. So I'm going to hand you over to them to introduce themselves. So first of all, my co-host Petri.
Hi everyone, I'm Petri from NORDIC XR Startups. Happy to be here again. And as Dave mentioned, today we're joined by two awesome people. And why don't you just quickly introduce yourself? First Doom and then Spike.
Awesome, thanks for having us here, guys. So I'm Dr. Doom. I'm the co-founder and CEO at LIV, where we build capture technologies empowering people to film themselves inside of their favorite experiences. Our rise to fame is mixed reality capture, which we'll show a video of just in a second. But to date, we also do avatar capture, first-person capture, and any kind of stream utilities surrounding bringing yourself, but also your chat and your fans into VR with you.
Hello, I'm Spike Laurie. I'm Venture Director at Hiro Capital. We're a Series A and B venture capital fund focusing on games, esports, digital sports, and game technology. We're very privileged to be investors in two brilliant virtual reality or XR companies, LIV, as Doom has just introduced, and Polyarc, who are the creators of the game Most. Anyone who's owned a VR headset has probably played it at one point or another. A beautiful narrative experience in virtual reality. So thank you very much for having me.
Great, fantastic. Again, two great investments. Full disclosure, we're also a co-investor in LIV, and I have to say the Polyarc team and Moss is one of my favorite games from last year. But let's start off with LIV. So I think one of the amazing things I find about the company is it really has become a staple of the whole VR gaming industry. But actually not many consumers may directly know about it. You know, the influencers do, the gaming companies do. So maybe we should play a short video just so that people can see what the power of what LIV can do.
Super hot.
Awesome. So yeah, Doom, over to you. Maybe you can talk us through the origins of LIV. Like, when did you get started, and what problem were you trying to solve when you originally started the company?
Sure. We started back in 2016 in what was a fairly small living room in San Francisco. I guess many stories start like that. And we didn't actually intend to build a company. We wanted to host a show on Twitch where we would play VR games and we would play those games competitively. I have a background in competitive gaming, so which is where I got the name Dr. Doom from. And the idea was that I would be sort of the show host, and my co-founder would be the guy behind the scenes setting up mixed reality, and then we would see what happens. And what we found really quickly was that there are really no tools out there for creators to capture themselves inside VR in ways that make sense, in ways that are relatable to an audience that, at least at that time, and also I would say today, by and large, haven't heard of VR and don't know what being in VR is like. Mixed reality ends up being a really nice bridge that allows people to have that contextual shot of what it is like to be in VR without having to necessarily put on a VR headset. Not to say that there's a substitute for it. The 6-off experience is very unique in itself.
Yeah, great. And you were actually kind of quite instrumental in the early success of games like Beat Saber. I think one of the interesting things about VR is it's quite difficult to relay just how amazing the experience is in a VR headset, but mixed reality takes us close to doing that. And I think Beat Saber was a very visceral example of that. What actually happened there?
Yeah, Beat Saber is a great story. We, one of our engineers, our first hire actually, Mystery, who's Czech-based, had worked with Jan Ilavsky, one of the lead designers and developers at Beat Games in the past. And so before Beat Saber even knew about LIV, they were working on their own mixed reality solution. They sort of had realized that they need to be able to show this game and what they thought was its full glory, mixed reality being the tool there. And to be quite transparent, we're built on the shoulders of other giants, such as Valve themselves, who had their own really early, quite rough around the edges baseline implementation, along with folks at Fantastic Contraption, Kurt Gardner there, as well as the folks at Crow Team with Serious Sam, which is actually the first game we ever captured at LIV, and what was our first ever viral video, myself playing Serious Sam in mixed reality. But they were working on mixed reality, and they had heard through Mystery at the time that we were also trying to do this as a solution, as a product, and they graciously allowed us to do it for them, even though I think at the time they certainly believed they could do it better, and potentially maybe were able to do it better. But we were dedicated to doing it. They let us do it for them, and a week and a half, I believe, before Beat Saber launched, maybe even a little bit longer, we sent a video on Twitter to Jan showing the integration working and showing a clip of Swan at the time, who at this point is labeled the Beat Saber girl, playing one of the marquee songs in mixed reality. And we went to bed that night and woke up to 5 million views. And, you know, a very compressed story here, but within 3 months, we were up to 500 million views, and that video had reached every single corner of the world.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, Spike, I mean, you just recently joined as an investor also with Hiro Capital. Can you talk to us through the process? What got you excited about LIV, and what kind of points you evaluated before joining?
Certainly. I think the thing that we like most about LIV and its strength is that it is, you know, the technology is the requirement of marketing virtual reality games, the compositing of the volumetric data from inside the game world and the real cameras and the real person is a requirement of marketing VR games today to your audience. And so what we love most about LIV is that it is uniquely positioned to be that almost a bridge between these incredible, Doom will laugh at me if I say 3D because it's not right, but these incredible kind of immersive virtual worlds that the game designers are creating, and this modern phenomenon of Twitch streaming and YouTube videos and showing off the content of the games with influencers putting themselves in the middle of the action. And I think that's what I personally and what Hiro as a fund find most exciting about what LIV is building and what they're doing.
Maybe I'll just follow that up by you mentioned you were investors in Polyarc, like you're investors in other VR companies. How bullish are you in general about VR or this new medium of entertainment and gaming?
Yeah, that's a great question, because to some people it's too early. To other people, they've already, I know other funds and other people who have invested even earlier and haven't seen the traction that everyone was hoping for from VR. I think what is clear is that technology is converging. We are seeing this convergence of technology across the board. The computing power in mobile phones keeps getting bigger, and it keeps eating away at the what a traditional PC would have done in the past. We are seeing the convergence of virtual reality and augmented reality converging into this sort of mixed reality or XR or whatever you want to call it. And we're also seeing the advent of technologies like cloud streaming as well, which are removing completely the requirement of physical hardware. You know, I'm wearing a Quest headset at the moment. Happens to be a pretty you know, a casual way into the VR market. It certainly doesn't have the compute power of the other headsets, or you know, it ticks a lot of the boxes for a more casual VR user like myself. And I think as all those technologies start to converge, we are going to see a much bigger mass adoption of technology, and that chasm, that crossing that chasm from very hardcore early adopters, difficult technology, hard to engage with, to easily, you know, putting on a headset, diving straight into a chat session with your family or friends or colleagues in an environment like this. That is what the investors are hoping is going to happen in this next life cycle. I think that the last thing I want to add on that is, you know, this environment's a perfect example of that. You know, the last time that we were in this together as a group, we had to sideload the content. It was a very different experience. Today, you know, just a month later, it's click one button, choose your avatar, and get straight in. And that is what the investment landscape is hoping is happening this cycle.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I guess my investment view on the space, certainly in gaming, just gaming, it's a really interesting time, right? Because you're at this sweet spot where the market is probably big enough for a studio now to kind of return money on a game, grow a franchise, and things like that. And you would find, you know, if you were launching a studio now in, you know, mobile free to play, for example, yeah, that's a big addressable market, but there's a lot of people who are addressing that same market, and you need a lot of investment dollars to be able to go and acquire users and market your game. But we have a sweet spot now where a game like Beat Saber can come along with just 4 developers, build something absolutely killer for the medium, and go straight to the top of the charts and maintain. And you know, we've, you know, that, you know, on the Steam store, you know, that's done close to 150 million in revenue this year for VR titles. You know, Quest is there with 150 million for just Quest sales. You know, you have platforms like Viveport as well. So it's actually a really interesting time where I think investors can come in, get into some of those kind of marquee early studios and be very successful with it. But Doom, you kind of see this from the inside, right? Because you're integrating with all the new titles as they come up. Like, what are you seeing? Are you seeing more bigger studios coming into the space, or is it still the indies that are doing things right?
I think by and large it's still quite sparse. There's a point I wanted to mention earlier to Petri's question, which is, I think what you can't ignore is how compelling the VR experience can be. Now, it certainly isn't all the time, but even doing a panel and podcast in here is meaningfully better for me as a panelist than it is sitting on a Zoom call. And as is, you know, remoting in to anyone. You mentioned family and friends. My partner and I are long distance now because of COVID, and we spend time in VR chat together. And it really is an intimate experience. It is closer to a real hug that I can get over a phone than I could get in real life. So it's sort of that middle ground that it does help sort of bridge a little bit. And I think from a content perspective, there are gems out there, the Beat Sabers of the world, the Polyarchs of the world, but they're far and few between. And on our end, we've seen more SDK requests overall, but it hasn't been a significant upswing of a hockey stick-like growth. And I think it's largely because the market is fairly small, with room for small teams to have an outlier success, kind of like the Beat Games of the world, the FitXRs of the world, which Hiro is also invested in.
Yeah, that brings an interesting topic. So monetization and KPIs and metrics, and maybe Doom, you can discuss about your views about monetization for LIV in a minute. But Spike, we're looking at a new technology, new market, smallish market, constantly growing. They've mentioned the numbers that are growing on platform sales, but how do you look at, while investing, at kind of KPIs and where does the return come for you?
That's really hard. We're not investing today in the VR market because of the returns here. Doom rightly corrected me. I completely forgot to mention FidXR, which are our third VR investment, and actually, doing incredible stuff in the fitness market. Completely changing the way that people engage with that. And to your point, yes, they're making money. The Box VR is incredibly successful right off the bat. But the opportunity right now isn't about we don't expect these studios to be making money today. What we expect, and FidXR is a perfect example, they are building the fitness platform of the future. And that isn't a traditional game in a game sense, that really is using this new fabric of the virtual reality to redefine what that looks like. And so, to your point on return, our wish would be that obviously we're a venture capital fund, we have to make money for our investors. We're not a charitable organization, but we would hope that over that sort of boot cycle of the next 8 to 10 years, these businesses like Polyarc, like LIV, like FidXR are really pillars of the framework of this new digital reality that we're crafting together.
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to FidXR. I mean, it's really given me a chance to do some cardio workouts, and it's amazing to see that whenever you're joining a group session, it gets completed instantly. Like you don't have to actually wait up or like multiplayer is becoming a reality in VR also.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I'm also a big fan of FitXR. Doom, you've also seen the growth of things like Population One that's just come out recently with LIV. What categories are kind of really coming through? What feels good in VR that couldn't have been done in other mediums?
I think ironically, Population One is a game that a lot of people would say doesn't really leverage VR for what VR can do. A good example is things like throwing a grenade and reloading your weapon are somewhat simplified. They've wanted it to be accessible as opposed to being a simulation, say like Onward, where you have to know every nook and cranny of a weapon to know how to put a bullet in there. But I think, overall, one advice that I always go back to when it comes to games in general is we were speaking to a former product manager at Twitch many moons ago, and he mentioned that over 70% of the minutes watched on Twitch are shooting games. And so you would expect that same behavior to roll over into VR. And I think that has certainly changed with Twitch, with just chatting getting really big and other categories growing. But games like Population One, Onward, and Pavlov are doing really, really well. Population One came out recently and is doing exceptionally well, especially on the Oculus platform, which is their main platform. So I think it's really more about is the core game loop fun? We knew when we tried Population One, I guess at this point almost 3 years ago, during the early alphas when it was just PC VR, that game had a lot of potential because we couldn't wait to get back into the playtests. And you very, very rarely get that with VR. So even though it is fun to be in a new VR environment, and like here we're sitting with an open ceiling looking at space, that is cool for a couple of minutes. But that novelty wears off very quickly once you've spent many, many hours in VR. And so you have to fall back to the core game mechanics and if they're fun. Fortunately for developers, VR lends you the opportunity to try out new game mechanics. Beat Saber's game mechanic is that there isn't a game mechanic, pretty much, right? It is you have two swords, slice the colors in the right direction. And that itself is a novelty. It is a way of playing games that you couldn't play before. Our CTO always says VR lends itself well to create games that you just couldn't replicate in 2D. Beat Saber is for sure a rhythm game, and rhythm games are very, very common in the non-VR world, but you couldn't replicate Beat Saber as a game on 2D. You would be falling back to something like Tap Tap Revolution or DDR. And so I think that's a good lens to look at it from. And in many ways, what we look at is what are some of the experiences that we can provide creators and their fans that are differentiated in VR. As a fan, how do you interact with your favorite creator or with your friends and family who are in VR? And how can we put that experience on steroids? Because we now have this sick-off environment that we can play with. For example, I can pet Petri on the head, and Petri probably feels it a little bit. There's like my ghost hand is a little bit there. A good experiment people can run at home is hop into a world like VR chat, grab something that looks like food, like a burger, and just feed it to your mouth while you open your mouth. And tell me if you don't feel a bit of a ghost sensation around your mouth as you're about to bring the burger to your mouth. Our brains are really, really stupid, and we can hijack them in really effective ways, particularly once this gets better, right? We're still in the pre-early days.
Yeah, and I think on the high end in PCVR, we're seeing some experiences like EA Squadrons coming with VR mode. I'm very excited about Microsoft Flight Simulator. Like, just think, I started playing playing flight simulators on an IBM PC with huge floppy disk. Now to be able to sit in VR in the high end, with my stick and just fly anywhere in the world. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. But coming back to LIV, the product, I wanted to ask, so one big new product feature you had this year was to bring out LIV avatars. So that is, for those who aren't familiar, instead of just putting a recording of myself into the mixed reality, I can actually be an avatar if I don't have a camera, or I just, I don't want to, I'm not comfortable showing myself on camera. Maybe talk us through LIV avatars and how you're thinking about identity and avatar systems for the product.
Sure. And just to clarify, you said recording, and I want to make sure that it's clear that the novelty of what we do is that it's in real time. You don't actually have to pre-record anything. You can put your camera on, and now you're in real time filming yourself. And with avatars, the impetus was really two things. One was physical cameras have physical world limitations. In other words, they have to be propped up somewhere. If someone isn't carrying it around and moving it, it's only a static camera. And in many ways, there are people out there who don't actually want to be on camera. They don't want to be themselves. And we see this more and more with people who are traditionally from the gaming world. But then also in the East, we know that VTubing is really big and has just been continued to grow. And certainly with the advent of VR, that has been sort of supercharged and been brought back into attention. And so we wanted to find a solution that allowed us to both rid ourselves of the physical limitations of physical cameras and also provide a solution for VR users and creators who want to be an avatar. And so LIV Avatars is just that. It actually uses the exact same transport layer that we've built for mixed reality. So from an underlying infrastructure perspective, they are the same thing. But we can render essentially any avatar, any object into and out of the world. Avatars is actually just what we choose to render. You can certainly render other things. And I've shown Spike some experiments internally where we render cosmetics on top of real people. So, traditionally in games, you could, unlock shoulder pads that you put on yourself. And now you have flaming shoulder pads. Well, what we can do is we can unlock flaming shoulder pads that are digital that you put on your physical body. And now suddenly you look like a badass. So you can think of our avatar system, the product is avatars for users, but the tech really is injecting 3D assets in runtime on top of real tracked humans.
Now you mentioned VTubers. Obviously, at NORDIC XR Startups, we're backed by Gumi from Japan, and we've seen very close the success that they've had there with Kizunai and the likes. We've always kind of thought, like, how could this concept be brought to the Western world, to our cultures, and do you see a future of, one-to-one, it's never going to be applicable here, obviously, due to cultural differences, but can you contextualize it to our cultures, and do you see a future of it here? Maybe a question to both of you.
I think by and large, we're not going to see a lot of as much anime girls and sort of anime-inspired avatars as we do in the East. But right now we are all avatars. I tried to make an avatar that looks somewhat like me, and ideally I'd be 80% me and 20% Dr. Doom. And so I think as avatars get better, we are actually going to leapfrog physical cameras entirely. The other question is, like, why would you need a physical camera if the avatar looks just like you, or if the avatar looks like an enhanced version of you? giving you the flexibility of virtual cameras. To clarify, on LIV avatars, you have a whole range of different camera behaviors and draggable and movable cameras that you can put up yourself. So you can create your own completely custom spectator experience based on how you think your show or your stream should look like. So I think that's the Trojan horse, right? It's less about alien anime avatars, but more about being who you want to be. And I think that concept rings true with everyone in the world, certainly in the East, but also in the West, increasingly so.
Yeah, Spike, what are you seeing in the kind of virtual beings and avatar space?
Well, it raises an interesting question. I've actually just been reminded of listening to Doom talk about that. You know, the avatar being a better enhanced version of yourself, and don't even need the camera anymore. You know, I think we're seeing in society the digitization of all of the avatarization of all of our beings. You know, Instagram, a perfect example, Snapchat filters, things like that. We're already starting to put better bits of ourselves forward. But actually, what I was thinking about there, Doom, and a little bit of a tangent, I apologize. There's this, I think it was a philosophical question that was posed a long time ago about a ship that goes to sea, and as it goes out to sea, the mast breaks and a new mast gets put on, and the sail breaks, a new sail gets on, and slowly after this sort of journey, by the time it comes back to port, every piece of that ship has been rebuilt from scratch as it had to. And the philosophical question is that ship the same ship that left port, even though it's piece by piece been fixed as it gets till none of it remains of the original. So again, it's sort of a philosophical question, I guess. Is your avatar you? Are you your avatar? And is in the future and in this world of VR that we're ushering in, these better versions of ourselves, at what point are they extensions of ourselves and expressions of ourselves? And at what point actually are we completely fabricating? And I think we laughed last time, Doom, we were in this room, that we both got the opportunity to make our avatars here. And we've both, I don't know if you're able to see what we end up looking like, but they're sort of, they're expressions of yourself. But this is a serious panel with very serious hosts, and we are talking about a serious subject. But would I have wanted a cape and maybe some gold booster rockets, or like a Dragon Ball Z scanner on my right eye? Potentially, right? And at what point do we start to lean on fantasy and the works of fiction to guide us in how we exhibit ourselves in this new kind of existence?
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting question. We had just a quick plug for episode 1 where we had Tipatat from VR Fund and Sean from Rec Room. We talked about this this question, and Tipatat's strong view was, well, identity is very important, but as I go from different platforms to different platforms, you're probably going to want to have a different identity, right? I think a lot of people want this one unified, I log in, I'm the same person, people recognize me across the metaverse. But I think in reality, what I look like in Population 1 is going to be very different to if I go to a virtual conference in Engage versus, if I'm, playing with my friends in VR chat or Rec Room.
I would challenge that, actually, on that real quick.
Yeah,
I would challenge that because I remember, my name is Dr. Doom, and I live by it religiously, so I'm probably an exception to the rule. But I would have preferred to have the same Dr. Doom across experiences, because I know people recognize me as Dr. Doom. And I get a lot of social validation hopping into spaces and worlds where people recognize me. I would argue and say the reason people get so bought into their avatars in games is not just because they invest a lot of time into it, but it's because other people recognize them as that avatar. And if they achieve something, that achievement is now tied to that name and that avatar. So I can hop into games and people can recognize me from my days playing competitive Marvel vs. Capcom and say, are you that Dr. Doom? And I certainly, full disclosure, I have folders full of screenshots of people recognizing me, because to me that is part of my legacy, right? Part of my online legacy is the stuff I have achieved and that people recognize me for.
You might look a little less tactical here than you might do in Population 1, though. I think
I would definitely be a Dr. Doom avatar if I could. I tried to have a green shirt and green hair. It didn't work.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think these avatar systems still have a way to go, right? I mean, I would definitely love, to be able to choose, various different, digital garments and things like that. So again, I think things like digital goods and virtual fashion, whereas those categories didn't exist to invest in, whereas I think now all of a sudden, because we're spending all of our times in these worlds and projecting ourselves onto YouTube and Twitch in products like LIV, it suddenly becomes a lot more important.
Maybe before we start wrapping up, Spike, what do you think is still missing from VR, from these experiences? What would you like to see coming up?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that there's a chicken and an egg. You need to have the mass consumer adoption in order to move the bigger players or the most to invest into the space. On the flip side, the mass consumer adoption isn't going to come until A, the technology is there, or B, the use cases for VR are so creative. And I think we're still in that early phase of ideation. Beat Saber unlocked our imagination in some respects, but we're still a long way to go on what is that kind of what is so special about virtual reality, and what is driving the consumer to adopt it. And is it pure simulation? No, that's not the right answer. But there has to be something there, and I think the creativity is still being unleashed, and I think we're still waiting for those 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 50 more brilliant creative ideas that start coming and start ideating, that start to drive people to go, wow, this is where I want to spend more time. And we're getting there. But it's you've got to walk before you can run.
Yeah, and Doom, what's anything that you want to tell the audience about that's coming up for LIV, or any plugs for the product and things you've got coming ahead?
I hate plugging the product. I love for the product to speak for itself. But I would say there's probably a lot more casual people listening to this than say our core user base. And we've long thought about, downstream of the pro creator. That is not the right word. The pro creator, the people who are professional content creators. How do people engage with content, and more importantly, create content if they aren't, a PC VR hardcore user? And so one of the questions we've asked ourselves for a long time is, what does the bite-sized TikTok format style content look like when people have, Picos, Cosmoses, Quests, and just a mobile phone? And so to that extent, for 2021, roughly Q2 2021, we'll be releasing our completely standalone mobile app. It will essentially be feature parity with the desktop app, doing the rendering on the headset and the compositing on the phone. Spike mentioned briefly earlier that we've seen this convergence of powerful GPUs and CPUs hopping onto mobile chipsets. And so mobile phones are actually quite powerful now. Apple just released LiDAR-powered iOS devices, which means you can do completely perfect, I say completely, increasingly perfect background segmentation without using green screens. And so a lot of this stuff, anything from camera tech and camera vision, all the way down to performance on GPUs and CPUs, and of course VR tech is coming together, and it's allowing us to take what we've reserved historically for hardcore PC VR creators with a 2080 Ti in the motherboard, down to someone who just has an iPhone, an Android device, and a headset. So we're super excited about that and unlocking that for everyone who's now new to the market.
Great, awesome. So brilliant. I think we should wrap it up there, because we've all got other things to get to in the real world. But maybe we could just go along, just a quick, where can people reach you, get hold of you, find out more about what you're doing? Spike, let's start with you.
Yeah, you can find me we've got a form on our website, Hiro.Capital, where you can, if you're a studio that's creating content, or another investor, or whoever, if you're just interested in talking, you can reach out to us there, and we'll get to the right person. Or you can follow me on Twitter @SpikeSaysYeah.
Brilliant, awesome. Doom?
I never self-plug, so please check out LIV. We're on live.tv on the web, live.chat if you want to hop into our Discord. We have 26,000 other nerds in there who love what we do and who love to share their stuff. And then check us out on Twitter. We're @LIV on pretty much every platform: Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. We got lucky.
Petri?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter Rajahalme.
Awesome. And I'm at Haynes_Dave on Twitter. And yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you to you guys for taking the time to come and do this, get into VR and do this podcast. And yeah, thank you for those of you who made it to the end of the podcast, and we'll see you for the next one.
Bye.